You know, when you get like a physical cut, you can literally watch it heal.
Right, yeah.
There's this predictable, almost comforting biological scaffolding to it. White blood cells rush in, it bleeds, it scabs, it forms a scar.
Exactly.
You can track the progress right there on your skin. But when a relationship ends, especially one that never officially started, we somehow expect that exact same linear healing process to apply to our minds.
Which is just, it's wild how much we expect from our brains.
Yeah, we even invent these rigid, completely arbitrary timelines. Like, you know that old cliche, it takes half the amount of time you were together to get over someone.
Oh, I hate that one.
Yeah.
It's a fundamental misunderstanding of how the human brain actually processes loss.
Right.
Because emotional healing, particularly when it involves like complex or undefined grief, it absolutely does not respect a calendar.
No, it really doesn't.
The brain just doesn't have a neat little biological blueprint for letting go of an attachment, especially when the parameters of that attachment were, completely blurred to begin with.
Okay, let's unpack this, because today we are going deep into a piece of source material that completely shatters that myth of linear healing.
It really does.
For you listening, we're looking at a raw, real-time diary of heartbreak. It's titled 365 Days Without You by Akhira. And for this deep dive, we're focusing specifically on the first 200 days of this text.
Yeah, and it's an intense read.
It is. And our mission here isn't just to, read you sad quotes. We are using this as a roadmap to understand the actual neurological anatomy of human grief. We want to figure out why letting go of an almost relationship can actually be harder than mourning a defined one. And how your brain attempts to process the loss of someone who is still out there just walking around in the world.
It's a profound case study in the mechanics of human attachment. Whether you, the listener, have been through this specific flavor of agonizing, unrequited love, or you just simply want to understand the hidden machinery of human psychology, you're going to see how memory and self-worth and our basic survival instincts just completely collide. We are looking at what happens when the brain is forced to detach without a clear set of instructions.
And that lack of instructions is exactly where the pain originates in the early days of this text. When you read Akhira's entries, the trauma isn't just about the absence of the person.
Yeah.
It's about the void they left behind because there was no actual ending. Day one sets this heavy tone immediately. The author just writes, "I deserved a better goodbye."
Oof.
Right.
Yeah.
And then almost 5 months later, in day 146, that exact same void is still echoing. They write, "You didn't even say goodbye. You just left me."
What's fascinating here is how the human brain processes incomplete narratives.
Tell me about it.
Well, we are biologically wired to be prediction machines. In psychology, there's this concept called the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect.
Yeah, exactly. It dictates that human memory holds on to unfinished tasks or interrupted events way more intensely than completed ones.
Yep.
Your brain literally uses up active cognitive load to keep the file open until it finds a resolution. We crave narrative completion.
So we need an ending.
Right. We need the period at the end of the sentence to tell the nervous system, okay, this event is over, we can file it away. But without a definitive goodbye, the mind just gets trapped in an endless loop. It's constantly expending energy, trying to close a loop that simply cannot be closed.
That makes so much sense. Think about the last time you read a gripping, incredible novel. Now imagine you get to the climax, you turn the page, and you discover the final chapter has been violently ripped out of the book.
You'd be furious.
Exactly. You wouldn't just shrug, put the book down, and say, "Oh, well, guess I'll never know." Your brain would obsess over it. It would try to write the ending itself because the author didn't provide one.
That's a great analogy.
But in the context of this text, it's not just the ending that lacked definition, it was the entire relationship. In day 63, the author captures this agonizing ambiguity writing, "Almost is what we always will be." And later in day 190, they summarize it by saying, "We weren't something, but we weren't nothing. Whatever we were, you were special."
You're basically left holding the pen, trying to write the end of a story where you didn't even know the genre.
Right.
And because there was no defined label, because you, quote, weren't something but weren't nothing, the brain literally doesn't know which grieving protocol to initiate.
Which leads me to a question I really want to push you on.
Okay, go for it.
When I look at the sheer intensity of the pain in this text, I really have to wonder, Is the suffering actually magnified because it was only an almost?
I see what you mean.
Like, think about the societal mechanics of grief. If you get divorced, or if your partner of 5 years leaves you, society gives you a script. Your friends come over, they validate your anger. But does the lack of a formal relationship status deny the author the societal permission to grieve fully?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the psychological term for that is disenfranchised grief.
Disenfranchised grief.
Right. It's grief that isn't openly acknowledged or socially validated. But to understand why that magnifies the pain so much, we have to look at human evolutionary biology.
Okay.
We're pack animals. For early humans, isolation meant death.
Literally.
Literally. So when we experience a loss, we biologically require the pack, our friends, our society, to mourn with us. It's a signaling mechanism that tells our nervous system, you've lost an attachment, but the tribe still supports you. You're safe.
Wow. So the community support is basically a survival signal.
Exactly. But when you mourn an almost, society often says, well, you were never officially dating. Why are you so devastated?
Which is so invalidating.
It is. And without that communal validation, the brain registers a double threat. You've lost the attachment and the tribe is rejecting your reality. You internalize the pain, you doubt your own sanity, and that isolation compounds the trauma exponentially.
Because there's no societal ritual to help you process it.
Yeah.
And no actual goodbye from the person. So your brain is entirely isolated. And when the brain is isolated like that, it starts feeding on whatever it has left, which is just the memories. We see this brutal transition in the text where these memories stop being comforts and they actually weaponize against the author.
They really do.
They turn into daily hauntings. I mean, in day 50, the central paradox of the entire deep dive is laid bare. The author writes, one of the hardest things you will ever have to do is to grieve the loss of a person who is still alive.
Yeah, that line hits hard.
And they hit this again in day 45. How odd is it to be haunted by someone that is still alive?
This raises an important question about the fundamental nature of how we mourn in the modern world. Evolution designed the grieving process to handle the absolute finality of death.
Right.
When someone dies, your brain eventually categorizes them as permanently inaccessible. The prediction machine updates its model.
Because they're gone.
Exactly. But grieving the living, that creates a chronic prediction error. The person is gone from your immediate life, but they're still out there. They might be updating their social media or walking into your favorite coffee shop.
Just living their life.
Yeah. It turns grief from an acute processing event into a chronic inflammatory condition. Every single morning you wake up, your brain has to actively relearn the fact that they are no longer yours.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because reading these entries about being haunted by the living, it instantly made me think of phantom limb syndrome.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Phantom limb syndrome is the exact physiological mirror for this experience.
Really?
Yes. In the somatosensory cortex of the brain, there's a literal physical map of your body. When a limb is amputated, the arm or leg is physically gone, but the neurological map in the brain remains completely intact.
So the brain still thinks the arm is there.
Right. The nerve pathways are still firing, expecting feedback from a hand that isn't there.
Right.
Which creates the sensation of real, excruciating pain in empty space.
Exactly. And that is what is happening emotionally in this diary. The relationship has been amputated. But the neurological pathways that the author built for this person, the habits, the inside jokes, the expectation of a morning text, those are still fully mapped in the brain. They pick up their phone to share a funny thought, that emotional nerve fires, and then it hits a void.
Yeah.
The brain is continually shocked by the absence. Day 104 captures this disbelief perfectly. The author notes that if someone had told them 3 years ago they'd never speak again, we would have laughed in their face.
Going from total intimacy to total estrangement breaks the brain's map.
It shatters it. And day 8 twists the knife on this. They write, how do you go back to being strangers with someone who has seen your soul? And then day 138 spells out the collateral damage. We break promises and memories break us.
The memory is the phantom limb.
Yes.
And being constantly shocked by this phantom pain forces the author into this brutal, exhausting internal tug of war. Your logical mind, the prefrontal cortex, which handles reason and survival, it knows the reality of the situation.
It knows they're gone.
Right. But your emotional center, the limbic system, refuses to update the map.
And you can track this war between self-awareness and irrational hope day by day. You see these intense, crushing moments of self-reproach where the logical brain is just disgusted with the emotional brain.
Definitely.
Look at day 7. The author admits feeling fucking pathetic for missing someone who is actively angry and upsetting them. And they use that exact word again in day 74, saying they feel pathetic because even after all the broken trust, they know they would still answer a 5 a.m. phone call 3 months later.
And they clearly recognize the inherent unfairness of this dynamic.
Yeah.
In day 75, they articulate the severe power asymmetry of the breakup.
Right, what did I say there?
They say, the saddest thing ever is when you both loved each other, and then one day, one fell out of love and left the other still in love. So the logical brain is fully aware of the imbalance.
But then, interspersed with all this despair, you get these fierce flashes of self-advocacy.
Yes.
The logical brain successfully fights back, even if it's temporary. Like in day 88, you see this definitive shift. They write, this time I won't wait, you want me. You'll have to show me. And day 151 hits a genuinely empowering note. I think this is the part where I decide that I am worth more than what you're giving me.
That right there is the textbook definition of cognitive dissonance.
Really? How so?
It's the mental discomfort of holding two entirely conflicting realities in your head at the exact same time. We see the author swinging wildly between these states.
Back and forth.
Yeah. One moment they're accepting the reality of defeat, like in day 102, writing, you are never coming back, and I am honestly trying my hardest to be okay with that.
Right.
And then the emotional brain yanks the wheel back, leading to irrational bargaining. Just look at day 173. Whatever we were, can we just be it again?
So what does this all mean? Because we keep talking about this through the lens of romantic longing. Society conditions us to look at this and say, oh, the heart wants what it wants. Love is so tragic.
Right, the romanticized view.
Yeah. But when I read this rapid cycling between logical self-worth and absolute desperation, I mean, this doesn't read like a romance. It reads exactly like the clinical cycle of addiction and withdrawal.
That's because it is. The clinical overlap between romantic rejection and chemical withdrawal isn't just a metaphor. It's a neurological reality.
Right.
Let's look at the specific behaviors the author is documenting here.
Well, the author practically diagnoses themselves. Listen to the language in day 90. I was addicted to the way you pretended. And then day 85. One of the most toxic things I've ever done is ignore the bad in someone because I love them. We know that almost relationships thrive on breadcrumbing. You know, giving just enough attention to keep the person hooked, but never enough to provide security. Isn't that essentially just intermittent reinforcement?
It is the exact mechanism of intermittent reinforcement, which, by the way, is the most powerful psychological hook in existence.
Seriously?
Oh, yeah. If you put a rat in a maze and give it a pellet of food every single time it presses a lever, the rat learns the pattern.
Okay.
It presses the lever when it's hungry and ignores it when it's full. That is a secure, defined relationship.
Yep, that makes sense.
But if you wire that lever to give food randomly, it sometimes gives a pellet, sometimes it gives nothing, the rat's dopamine system goes into overdrive.
Oh, wow, like a slot machine.
Exactly like a slot machine.
Yeah.
The unpredictability causes the dopamine spike to be massive. The rat will obsessively press that lever until it physically starves to death.
That's horrifying.
It is. But that is an almost relationship. When the author says they know they are worth more, but would still answer a 5 a.m. call, that is the prefrontal cortex being completely hijacked by the brain's reward center, just screaming for a randomized hit of dopamine.
Wow. So at that point, from a biological standpoint, love has stopped being a genuine emotion and has become a self-destructive habit. The brain imaging on this must be wild.
It really is. Functional MRI scans of people who have recently experienced an unexpected romantic rejection. They show intense activation in the exact same regions of the brain as individuals going through acute cocaine withdrawal.
You're kidding. That's intense.
The craving, the obsessive rumination, the physical pain in the chest. It is a literal detox process. When the author checks a social media profile or sends a message, it's not just a moment of weakness. It is a neurological relapse.
And this cycle of addiction and relapse perfectly illustrates why the timeline of healing in 365 days without you makes absolutely no logical sense.
Right.
It completely shatters the idea that time heals all wounds. Because if you are constantly relapsing, time isn't healing the wound. It's just measuring how long you've been bleeding.
Exactly. The timeline of the book is entirely nonlinear. It jumps around, which can feel jarring to read, but it is incredibly authentic to how the brain actually processes traumatic withdrawal.
It's so true. For instance, for you as a reader, you start day 1, assuming it's the day after the breakup. You think, okay, here starts the clock.
Yeah, that's in the natural assumption.
But then out of nowhere on day 21, the author drops this bomb. They write, here I am, 2 years later, still in love with you as ever. 2 years. That means this grieving process started years before the diary even began. The timeline is totally fractured.
It's fractured because the author's temporal reality is fractured. The past and the present are just bleeding into each other. And notice how we don't even get the origin story of this relationship until we are halfway through the text.
Right, day 52.
Yes, day 52 finally reveals the beginning. Falling in love at 4 a.m., laughing too hard, feeling happy for the first time in a long time, and knowing, as the author puts it, I was screwed.
That placement is so deliberate. It acts like a sudden relapse. The brain is trying to detox, and then boom, it serves up this vivid, high-definition memory of the initial dopamine hit, which completely resets the withdrawal clock. And it leads the author to this profound, almost terrifying acceptance of permanence. By day 182, they write, I'm not going to move on, maybe because you're the first person I've truly unconditionally loved.
Yeah.
And the text we are examining today concludes at day 200 with this line, 200 days later, and I still love you just as much as I did when we first met.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Akhira's text is performing a deeply necessary function. It is actively pushing back against our cultural mandate to just get over it.
Oh, absolutely.
Society demands a tidy recovery narrative. We want the grieving person to wipe their tears, go to therapy, hit the gym, and emerge completely fixed.
Like it never happened.
Right. But this author is suggesting that sometimes the idea of moving on is a biological myth. Sometimes, as they mentioned in day 185, carrying the love from a distance is the only realistic resolution. The brain doesn't necessarily shrink the grief. Instead, it has to structurally rewire itself to grow around the grief. You learn to accommodate the missing piece.
Which brings up the most ironic contradiction of the entire work. The title itself, 365 Days Without You.
Oh, yeah.
When you hear that title, it implies a finish line. It sets up an expectation for you, the reader, and maybe even for the author, that this is a 1-year countdown. Like at the end of 365 days, the clock strikes midnight and the addiction is magically cured. But reaching day 200 with literally 0 decrease in the intensity of the love, it proves the title is a trap. Grief isn't a countdown timer. You don't hit 0 and win. It's a chronic condition you just have to learn to live with.
The structure of a calendar implies that time moves us forward in a straight line. But emotional reality is a spiral.
A spiral, I like that.
You keep revisiting the exact same spots, the same memories, the same phantom pains, hopefully with a little more perspective or structural resilience each time. But the geography of the pain doesn't just disappear.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to think about the incredible journey we've taken through Akhira's mind today. We started by looking at the maddening lack of closure in an almost relationship, where the absence of a goodbye leaves the brain desperately searching for an ending that doesn't exist. We explored the phantom limb pain of grieving someone who is still alive, where memories turn into daily neurological hauntings, and we recognized that the brutal tug of war between knowing your worth and craving the dopamine of their presence means that healing isn't a linear countdown. It's a lifelong process of mental rewiring.
It really is a profound, unfiltered documentation of the human capacity to hold on to love, even when the environment offers absolutely no reinforcement in return.
It really is. But I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over today.
Okay.
Throughout this entire exploration of these 200 days, we've naturally assumed that the author is grieving the person who left. We assume the pain is about the missing ex-lover. But look back at that memory in day 52.
The origin story.
Right. The 4 a.m. laughs. That sudden, overwhelming feeling of genuine happiness after a long, dark period. What if the deepest tragedy in this entire text isn't actually the loss of the other person? What if it's the loss of the author's past self? Think about it. What if the hardest part of a breakup isn't figuring out how to say goodbye to them, but figuring out how to resurrect the vibrant, open, and happy version of you that they took with them when they walked out the door?